We're here with Andy Davis. And Andy, you didn't bring the scotch, buddy.
I did.
You did?
We have scotch.
Okay, well, there we go. Well, I was talking about up here. I wanted to have a fun interview.
Oh,
I mean,
see.
come on. Andy, of course,
Yeah,
is long associated with Trig Avionics. He has been their CEO. He's the boss, the grand poobah, and more important than anything else, brings the cool stuff. What's new at Trig?
First thing that's new at Trig is that we're actually here. I mean, that may sound like a strange thing, but as you were saying, this is my first time in country since 2019.
Yeah.
Because of all of the travel
still
restrictions. Here. We're still here.
Yeah.
We're still cracking on. But yeah, what a strange time it's been. Doing things remotely, trying to keep up with what's been going on. One of the effects of the last couple of years is changes in some of our emphasis on business and where our business has been. I have to say, almost paradoxically, one of our biggest growth areas has been here in the US, even though we couldn't get here. Turns out that maybe it's the national psyche, but when a pandemic hits, especially at the experimental end, people apparently go out in their yard and build an airplane, which has been good for us.
Or fix up the one they have.
Or fix up the one they have.
Or finish the one they started a long time ago.
Well, that as well, if you
discover
that you have extra time on your hands. So actually, you're right, some things are different, but the same. We have had some product development going on. There's some things which, if it hadn't been for the pandemic, we might have brought to market sooner, but are now coming out. So this year we have a couple of new products that we'll be shipping.
Outstanding. I assume Oshkosh will be a center point for what you're bringing to the industry from here on out?
Oshkosh is going to be a big celebration for us, yes. So we will have things to show and things to talk about, and again get back with our friends and re-engage. Outstanding.
So what was hot as far as your company was concerned? What was driving a lot of your sales?
Well, pre-pandemic, what was driving a lot of our sales was the ADS-B mandate.
Yeah.
That kind of has wrapped up now. There is still some follow-on business from that. There are still people who have not done the upgrades. There are still people, there are people who, of course, didn't do so much flying in the last couple of years and therefore didn't need to get into that airspace and didn't need to get out there. So there's still some trickling of business, but that's a lot of that is done. But we still have products there, and you're right, these guys finishing off those kit planes that they never got to. So that's good. We've moved on from that though now, and the things that we are bringing out this year, the main thing that's going to be shipping real soon now is our Navcom, the TX56A, and for this market, which is a slim form factor, full-featured Navcom, and that's going to drive quite a lot of our uptick and getting back into it this year.
Talk about the feature set for that.
It's form factor is one of the key features. It's just 1.3 inches high, which is a form factor previously used by the SL30 Navcom. It's a full-featured comm radio with built-in station memory, as well as a full-featured nav radio. So it does your VOR and ILS.
Okay.
Its likely market is the number 2. I mean, a lot of people, of course, have a GPS navigator as their number 1 comm, nav, GPS. But if you need something to back that up, second comm radio and that nav capability, particularly the ILS receiver, is what's going to get you there if something goes wrong with box number 1.
Redundancy is everything.
Redundancy is everything, and it as I say, it's fully featured. It'll drive the modern glass. It'll drive legacy indicators. So either for that retrofit upgrade or somebody doing a forward fit, it can do both.
Outstanding. What else is on your plate?
Some other things are going on in the background, which hopefully will come out later this year, but we're not really ready to talk about those at this stage.
Okay. Well, one of the serious draws to Trig has been your form factors.
Yep.
I mean, you build some tiny gear, and the best part is for the RV guy or the long easy guy, or for folks who are got older Cessna and Piper panels that are built to the max and crammed to the gills, and not a whole lot of space to fit in something else they need. You've been manna from heaven.
Yep.
How have you addressed that market, and how do you see that market maturing right now?
The form factors that we have are, I'm going to say, about as small as you practically need to get. We are doing some follow-on products in that form factor, which will be actually, I will say, slightly smaller, but not much smaller, because once you weigh less than a pound and doesn't take up much space at all, that's not really the driver. So it just becomes keeping the ideas going, adding some extra features and pushing that forward. So we do have some things going on in that space.
Okay.
We're also working to integrate those products with some other control heads, some other controllers that let you cram even more into the space.
5 pounds in a 2-pound bag, buddy.
Well, what's been attended is that panel real estate, even for some of the larger aircraft, is valuable. People want those larger screens, and using up the center stack to fill that kind of stuff in drives people down more of the remote path. So we have the remote gold boxes, as we call them, for the things like the transponders, where you can mount that somewhere else and it isn't taking up space in the panel. And so that's still a growth for us. That's real important.
Interesting. Where do you, what trends are you seeing in the U.S. market, or for that matter, the international market, that are attracting you? Seeing anything that's kind of saying, oh, okay, we see a course correction coming up?
I'm not going to say a course correction, because I think it's a continuation of what's already been going on.
Okay.
There is this move down towards the light sport, the experimental end of aviation. There's more of a split now happening with I have to be careful what I say here, because I own one of those old gas guzzlers, but the older gas guzzlers are being a little bit squeezed by fuel prices, which is a very current situation that's affecting everybody. But that general trend, the direction is not going to change.
No.
And so we're starting to see that if you're going for that very light end, the two-place airplanes with Rotax engines, there's some pretty interesting designs now that have some good capability, but they're more economical, and that's using modern methods, modern aerodynamics to get there. And so that's a growing portion of our market. That's really important. At the other end, if it's real transportation, then that's going somewhere. So funnily enough, the gap in the middle is widening out between those two different areas of the industry.
We've been watching a trend of the industry right now in regards to what may be happening with what is currently called light sport, and will be augmented by new regulations, supposedly in the 23-24 timeframe. This will potentially include bigger, faster aircraft in a simpler certification and operational category.
Yep.
Some a little bit more liberal with licensing, so forth and so on. Are you prepared for this? Or what kind of preparations do you think you need to make as a company to be able to adapt to what seems to be on the horizon, even though much of the detail is nebulous?
I think that what people are looking for in the kinds of products that we make are not changing that much, because they're driven by regulations. So although you may change the airframe certification, the requirements for it to have ADS-B in particular rule airspace, or for it to communicate with the ground and so on, those are not changing particularly. So the form factor, though, comes into it, because that becomes important to people as to how they're going to use as I say, the panel real estate and so on. But I don't think it changes too much of what we need to do. We like it, though, because it is one of the ways that you can drive some growth back into the industry. GA is very slow moving, and providing opportunities for some of these new kinds of aircraft. It's happening in Europe as well. There's been changes to the so-called 600 kilo rules that are allowing additional types. Again, bigger, but coming up from the bottom rather than trying to shrink down a larger airframe, and that gives extra capability and better value for the aircraft generally.
Well, we're curious to see what's going to come up of all that. However, the big issue is the FAA and the industry guidance that they're taking has been really silent. There was a whole lot of hubbub. This is going to be this is going to be that. 2 years ago, not a whole lot since. The promise, of course, is that we will see a lot more information at Oshkosh this year, and it will take a year after that for a true regulation to be brought into existence. But schedules with the FAA, they tend to go.
Yeah, I think you previously said 2023. I think that might be optimistic.
Well, we were also hoping for 2021 a couple of years back. So
but something got in the way of that.
Yeah, something got in the way of that. So eek, schedules, those miserable little things we tend to look at, hope for, and ultimately break our hearts.
Yeah.
What can you do? Eek, crazy. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about a little bit, you are not a U.S. manufacturer. Being located out in Europe, you're at first subject to a different regulatory environment, have to cross the pond, and then there's the additional regulatory environment. Things must be a little bit more difficult for a Trig than it would be for a US-based manufacturer. How does that all work for you?
That's only slightly true. What's happened over the last few years is there has been additional bilateral agreements between EASA, the European Aviation Safety Agency, and the FAA that mean that now there is far more alignment of the different standards. Interesting enough, when we first started out even making transponders, the rules for at a very detailed level for a transponder in Europe and the rules for a transponder in the US were different. They've been aligned. So now if it meets one, it meets the other.
Cool.
So all of our products come with a European certification, but that is automatically accepted now by the FAA across all of the product lines. So from a point of view of getting in here, it doesn't make too much of a difference. There are some regulatory hurdles. I think that they are pretty much equal. I think that the way in which EASA certifies and TSOs our products is not that different to the way that the FAA does the same with our US colleagues. So it's pretty much a level playing field from that point of view.
Wonderful. Okay. I had heard at times it could be a little bit circuitous, but that information is a couple of years old, so obviously things seem to have
It has got better in the last small number of years, and
Excellent.
now it's really pretty straightforward.
Bureaucrats doing their jobs. Who
Bureaucrats
knew?
do their jobs eventually, yes.
Amazing. There you go. There are, excuse me, a little bit dry throat, folks, sorry. There are a number of problems that are occurring right now with supply chain. We're hearing right, left, and forward that when you least expect it, you can't get what you want.
Yep.
When you can get it, it's 2-3 times or more of the price that you had originally negotiated.
Yep.
So forth and so on. So how is Trig weathering the supply chain crisis?
We are doing okay. We have issues like a lot of people do. The good news is that there is no kind of what I'll call system-wide impact on our product lines that is stopping any particular product lines. But you're right, it is sometimes it's small components that are just generic things that you would always expect to buy, and they suddenly turn out to be on a 26-week lead time or something like that. We had discussions the other day in the office about sheet metal that you fold to make the trays that has gone on to long lead because it turns out that you can't buy the metal. The good news is we do have stock in our supply chain for most of the parts most of the time. But it is true that we have had disruptions in, and I'd say surprising things, whether it is cardboard or sheet metal or whatever, and you can't quite get there. We've been placing ever longer orders with our suppliers, which is a bit scary when you're trying to guess what you're going to make in 2023, because you actually have to place the orders now for those parts.
And of course, what you order now has to be paid for now, so that must
in some cases,
cash flow.
In some cases,
totally
you have to pay
bonkers.
for it.
Yeah.
Because the thing that we've all discovered in the last few months is there's a new word in the electronics industry called a decommit, which is that you had an order. You knew you were going to get the parts, you had them scheduled out, they were going to get delivered, and then the supplier decommits, which means they just don't give it to you. And there was a line somebody else said, which is, so the only thing you can trust is the parts you've actually got in your building.
Ow. That has to hurt.
That has to cost.
Yeah.
That's actually the real impact, is that there's a cash flow pressure where you have to actually start stocking up on all of these things. And so far, I mean, there's a touch wood moment here. We're actually doing okay. Most of our products are available all of the time, but we have some lead time issues. So some things that you might have normally expected to be a week, 2 weeks, are now maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. But we're getting through there, and we're working with our customers, actually. Sometimes it's the case of, well, what do you really need? and see if we can support that customer for an install they're doing, for an airplane's in the shop. You need to get in there. And so, yep, so far so good. But yeah, it is quite stressful and quite a lot of running around in the background. It looks serene on the surface, but the legs are going fast under the surface.
It's the old duck on water game.
Duck on water game. That's what it looks like.
Great. Topside, below, just paddling furiously.
That's the one.
Ouch. We've also had some interesting discussions about the state of training. Trying to hire people right now has become an interesting game, apparently everywhere. It's a combination of finding people who are trained and then finding people who will work, which may not be the same thing at the same time.
Yep.
What experiences are you having out there? What advice do you give to the industry at L about how you're dealing with it, and potentially to the folks out there who are looking to enter and work in the industry?
So a couple of things. First of all, I'm not necessarily the good person to give advice on how you hire people, because we've been struggling to do that as well. In a couple of areas, even manufacturing people, it turns out to be quite hard to find them. One piece of advice that I would give is something that Trig has done for some time. We have an apprenticeship scheme. We take in young people and train them through the company, and in parallel release them, and they end up with a college degree at the end of the program. Mm-hmm. And we are actually trying to develop our own talent, and we have some people who
grow
come
your
through
own.
that program. Grow your own. I mean, we've been doing it for a while, and so we've actually now got some results from that. We have some people working up the company who did indeed start in our Grow Your Own program. It's worth doing. It's both giving back, but also it does give you benefits. And yeah, that's the one thing I would encourage people to do, is have some kind of start at the bottom apprenticeship program, properly funded, with proper external training as well. And I say our guys end up with college degrees, and some have gone on to do higher degrees, still sponsored by Trig, and we think that that's a pretty good way of going.
Well, that must require a tremendous amount of advanced planning and forward vision think.
It requires some forward vision think. It actually doesn't take that much planning. You just say, hey, let's do it. There are actually agencies that help you do it. So if you go along, there are programs that you can sign up for, where you can say, I actually want to do this. I don't know how to go about it. Tell me what to do. That's exactly how we first got started. They told us what to do. Sign these forms, do this, do that. Here's how to select the candidates. Here's how to go. And I mean, this is, I'm talking now, 10 years ago we started doing this. We still have guys going through programs today.
Wow.
And it's been great.
Wonderful. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Have you found some of the AEA educational outreach and so forth to be effective even across the pond?
Yes, we do. We do actually in our, because of course, although we're a manufacturer, we also run, for example, a repair station, because we need the Part 145 organization internally to do our own stuff. Some of the AEA materials are actually quite useful to both for onboarding people and also for refresher training, and that can be very useful. So it's actually great being part of the AEA, because they give that away free to the member organizations.
Interesting. Well, as we close this particular session, any more hints about what we might expect at Oshkosh or beyond? Come on, I gotta try. I mean, you know,
yeah,
just between you, me, and I promise they won't.
Nobody's
talk.
watching. I know. That's yeah. No.
Okay. Well, I tried. What can
Nice
I say?
try.
Well, I think Oshkosh this year is going to be interesting, just from the standpoint that there's a pent-up need to do something.
There is.
There's a pent-up need to go get something.
Yep.
There's a pent-up need to get out and fly. What's interesting, we are Sun and Fun's media partner. We do the daily and all that. I was privy to their chairman's meeting a couple of weeks ago, in which all of their advanced numbers for the show were at or above record levels on their primary indicators, and in some cases, they had 50% upkicks on record numbers. Now, this is the advanced sales for things like parking and RV area and all that kind of thing. So right now, the demand seems high, and providing the miasma that's settling in a little bit from people who are concerned about gas prices and other economic conditions don't hold them back, it could be a really good way to get back into the season of things here.
Because people want to get back out again.
Boy.
As you say, that pent-up feeling with too much locked in. Let's get out, let's meet people, let's do stuff.
Andy, I appreciate your time as always. It's been a while since you and I had a chance to sit here. Glad to finally get a chance to do it.
Yep.
This is Andy Davis, our CEO of Trig Avionics across the pond, who tend to bring really good scotch to these shows, so one of our favorite people. So there you go. Andy, thanks so much for joining us here on Airborne and Aero-TV and Aero-News.
News Network's coverage of the 65th Annual AEA International Convention and Trade Show, live from New Orleans, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors.
Vantage is Avidyne's family of all-new flight display systems for retrofit and forward-fit applications. Initial certification will be Vantage 12, retrofit glass for legacy Cirrus aircraft. Vantage 12 brings advanced capabilities and adds new life to Cirrus aircraft, including large 12-inch diagonal hybrid touchscreen displays, 3D synthetic vision, and split screen capabilities. Additional Vantage programs will be announced in the future.